All right. Donald, thank you so much for being on today. Really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you for letting me be here. I enjoy being on this.
Yes. And so I'm going to introduce you real quick and then we'll kind of jump on into how we can equip families right now. So, your focus on healthy families, and you work with your wife to transform behavior and anxiety issues through non medical processes for a better parent child relationship, right?
That's
And
correct.
and I know you work with a lot of different people, a lot of different kids and families, and really just help equip people with a lot of tools to deal with OCD, anxiety, a lot of these different things. So, um, knowing what we're talking about, everyone's at home with their kids, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
anxiety is, can be heightened when you're with your kid 24/7. And fortunately, things are starting to open back up again, which is
Hmm.
exciting. But I think we're in this for the long haul for a while. So um, we're trying to equip families to be creative in this time. And so, with your expertise of what you do, um, just tell me, well, first of all, tell me a little bit about what got you started in it, and then we can kind of dive into how we can help families right now.
Well, and it goes into which we'll talk about later, but the blog I did was really my story, or our story, I should say, of my family. We have two kids that suffer with OCD,
Okay.
and they took us through a journey that was rather unbelievable and very challenging. So from that, I took it on to want to help other parents and kids that are in that same place. I always talk about kind of a hopeless place. We
Mhm.
ours was so bad that there was so many hopeless times in our life that we couldn't see the opening to the end of the tunnel, the light at the end of the tunnel. It was that bad.
Wow.
And so we came out of it, and through a lot of the process that I work with people on, using those to help us come out of it. So I kind of made it my passion and my wife's passion to um, help other families that are in that same place.
Wow.
So it's being able and to be able to do it without having to go to medication. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying
Right.
a
Right.
lot of parents now are looking at they don't want to take their kids to that place
Wow.
of having to medicate them, and so we offer alternatives to that.
Okay. Awesome. Well, let's dive into that. What were some of the alternatives that you guys used that worked for you and your family?
Well, it's a combination of a lot. Myself, I'm a EFT tapping practitioner, so emotional freedom techniques is the full name of it, and it's a process that has been around since the 80s that people use to be able to bring down anxiety and also to flush out the negative traumas, all of that, to be able to get relief from those. And so that was a big tool that I used with my own kids. Plus, we do like meditation, mindfulness, uh,
Sure.
proper breathing techniques. There, one big thing that we're working right now with is communication, and that may sound like that doesn't make sense as far as what we're talking about as far as helping families be creative. But if communication to me can be a driver of anxiety or a reducer of anxiety,
Wow. Yes.
and and so in a family especially, understanding and communicating with each other and having to deal with each other makes a huge difference in what the anxiety and the behavior and everything. So it's important from what we learned from using those techniques. There's others. I mean, um, but those are some of the big ones that we use that really made a huge difference. And so I use them now with clients to be able to do the same thing.
Wow. So it sounds like you're really about intentionality
Hmm.
with
Oh yeah.
communication, with just dealing with anxiety before it comes up. Um,
Well, well, and you know, this whole what you're doing, the project that you're doing is all about creative, alternatives and creative ideas for parents and
yeah.
families right now. And one of the things I like to bring out is when you get into anxiety, that's really fight or flight.
Mhm.
And people that I don't think really understand what fight or flight really does. I mean, it's a natural process for us, but it was made for us to protect us from a tiger attack, or whatever.
Sure.
But what we're running into now is we're stressing right now, and that's stress, anxiety, kind of the same thing.
Mhm.
And what they don't think about is what it's doing to us. The
Right.
stress is doing things to our body. Anxiety, fight or flight, causes a lot of chemical reactions that aren't good for us unless we're using them.
Sure.
But up here is and when we're talking about creativity, we want to have full mind uh, clarity to be able to be creative. And what happens with fight or flight is it tends to shut down parts of the brain, and one of them is the more upper thinking, creative part of the brain. It can shut it down or hamper it, and it also hampers our immune system. So especially now with the what we're going through with the pandemic, having your immune system at its full potential
Yes.
is vital. And that's what we're doing in getting fight or flight down, is opening that back up, getting more clarity so they can be creative, and also getting that immune system back online. Because the other thought is you've got all these chemicals happening like cortisols, adrenalines with fight or flight
Yeah.
that, if not used for action, for fighting, for doing the battle or whatever that the threat is, those things become toxic to us. So we have to have that immune system going.
Yes.
So I'd love to tell you all the fun craft things you could do, but what we do, I think, is helping them to be able to think well enough to be able to do those crafts, to do those creative things.
Sure. That's awesome. Do you have a story that kind of illustrates that? Taking someone from fight and flight, all those hormones and adrenaline to the being able to unlock the creative part of them.
Well, I've worked with artists before. I had a lady that I worked with that she was a painter, and she came to me uh, stressed and anxiety, and hadn't painted in, I think at that time, this has been a couple years ago, hadn't painted in about a year. Um, and so we did some work on and kind of digging into what was holding her back, what were the thoughts, the blocks that were really stopping her. And
Yeah.
we only did about 2 sessions before she came in on, like, I think it was the 3rd or 4th session. He goes, "I sat down last night and I started painting, and I had this," and she was able to get started on a painting, which that was thrilling to her, to be able to
Right. Right.
get back to that, after a
Wow.
year.
Wow. That's amazing. So there's something holding her back, just
Yeah.
anxiety, and I'm sure you can't go into too much detail, but it must have just been uh, something that you could unlock with your techniques and
Yeah, well, I'll give you, if you don't mind, one other example, and this one
sure, sure, go ahead.
isn't so much on the creative side, but one of my fun stories is, a lady came to me, and she couldn't fly. She would get on a plane, and she would get sick as can be on the plane, and it ruined so many vacations for her because as she said, she'd get really sick on the plane, and then she'd get to wherever they were going, get in the hotel. She'd be down for a couple of days. By the time she was feeling better, she would start thinking about, oh my gosh, I got to fly back, and she would it would just like resurface again.
Sure.
So I was able to get her on a plane. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and there's race teams are here. We have NASCAR, which is big. One of the race teams, I spoke with them, and I was going to rent a plane from them or something, and they were this the gentleman there was so kind. He just let me use the plane, and it was a nice sized plane. It wasn't just a little
Nice.
old little plane. It was a good sized plane, and I got her on there, did the tapping work and some other stuff with her,
Wow.
and 2 weeks later, she flew to Australia, which is a 24-hour flight
Yeah.
without a hitch, without a problem.
Wow.
And the
Wow.
the, the interesting twist of that was about 3 months later, my in-laws were moving up here to Charlotte to Sun City, and I'm talking with my mother-in-law, and she's saying, "Yeah, and I ran into my one of my oldest high school friends here, and she lives here in Sun City." And I'm like, "Oh," and we're talking, and she said, "Yeah," and she was telling me this amazing story about some guy who helped her get on a plane and get her through her fears, you
What?
know, and I couldn't, because I believe in the privacy. I said I couldn't tell her about it. I said,
Yeah, because
Ask her about me, ask her about me," and she said, "What?" And I said, just ask her about me." And so she, of course, she was so very open about it. In fact, she came and did like a testimonial in Sun City when I went down there and talked to the
wow.
group. So it was really powerful. She's still to this day. In fact, my mother-in-law complains that she's not around enough because her and her husband are traveling in Europe somewhere, flying
My
here, flying.
goodness.
So
Well, that is a small world for one thing, and that's so fun that the story could come full circle in your life. I mean, that must be very fulfilling for you, and just to help people.
it always feels good when you can, you have
Yeah,
a, a client that comes back and says, "Wow, you changed my life."
right,
Yeah.
right. And do you have any examples of even just kids? Because I think
Oh yeah.
I think kids carry anxiety a little differently sometimes. They don't know what's going on. So, you know,
Well, in fact, one of the stories that I had a teenager come to me. She was about 13, I think, at the time, and her mother brought her to me, and she was about ready to get kicked out of school because had a lot of anger. She had really big anxiety issues,
mhm, mhm,
and she would, a teacher would get on her about something, and she would just fight back, and it turned into she would be sent to the principal, whatever, constantly. And like I said, she had like one more opportunity and she would be out. So she came to me to do work, and we really just worked through the anger and was able to, again, one of those situations where she came to me. I don't know, it was like second to last uh, session we had. She came and said, "You wouldn't believe it. I actually didn't go after the teacher. I let her talk to me. I let her say what she wanted to say, and I didn't fight back." um, and actually this particular teenager was the whole reason. I have a podcast called The Invisible Wheelchair, which is about anxiety and OCD and all that.
wow, yeah,
And I got that name from that teenager because one day in the middle of a session, she got really worked up. She started getting kind of angry, and she said, "I just wish these kids would see my invisible wheelchair, and then they wouldn't tease me and they wouldn't bully me." And
wow,
I sat back. I was just awestruck by that. A teenager that is able to come up with that kind of concept as it
right,
is.
wow,
And to be able to see through that and see what it really was. And I mean, that's really what a lot of this is about, is being able to accept what's going on and see it.
right,
If you can see it, if you can put it out in front of you, you can work through it, then you can get past it.
yeah,
So it was a neat. She, like I said, her mom was amazed at how the transformation of it.
right. Wow, I love that. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, kids are very creative when it comes to concepts, and that's what I love about art. Really, is you are describing something or an allegorical description like that. The invisible wheelchair. You're describing something that you can't really put into other words.
Well, and you can get a full
Visual.
picture in your mind of it.
Yeah.
You're there. It's like saying, "Don't think about a pink elephant." And boom.
Right. Right.
It
And
it
suddenly you
just
see it, and it makes sense.
yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So, we're coming to the wrap up our time here, but if people want to get a hold of you, your guest blog is going to be coming out. Um, and what can people do to kind of get a hold of you or anything
Well,
like
my website is focusedhealthyfamily.com,
that?
so
Okay,
they can reach me there. And then, like I said, I have familyocd.com so
okay,
those are the two websites. And then, of course, the podcast, which is invisiblewheelchair.com,
awesome,
uh,
awesome.
and all contact information is there.
Sure. Okay, well, perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Donald, for your time today. I think that was hopefully shed some light in anxiety and ways to help deal with that right now, as there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. But there are tools and vehicles to to process through all of that.
Oh, yeah.
People don't have to be stuck, right? They don't have to
Yep.
be stuck in where they're at right now. And really, that's what this series is about: is how do we empower people to get unstuck, get creative, and find some solutions to help them and their family. So thank you so
Exactly.
much for your time.
Well, thank you, Jessica. It was really
Yeah.
enjoyable talking with you.
Yes, you too. Bye.